WVVA in Focus, a weekly program about important issues and events in the two Virginias.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this edition of In Focus. I'm your host, Melinda Zosh. This morning, we're talking about a very important topic. Is America in danger of losing its soul? In fact, this was an op-ed published earlier this month in the Courier-Journal that covers news in Louisville, Kentucky, and southern Indiana. And again, the title is America in danger of losing its soul? The conversation everyone needs to have in 2021. It's written by Dr. Brogdon, who's going to join us here in just a moment. He's a Bluefield native and director of Institute for Black Church Studies and a religion professor at Baptist Seminary of Kentucky and also at Bluefield College. Also joining us today to share some insight on this, again, very important topic about troubles in America. We have several pastors. Brandon Hay, who's with Life Church in Claypool Hill, Virginia, and also Pastor Travis Lowe joining us this morning with the Crossroads Church in Bluefield, West Virginia. So, Dr. Brogdon, we'll start with you this morning. Your op-ed alludes to President Biden mentioning that he was fighting for the soul of America, and we heard that quite a bit during his campaign. You touch on various issues plaguing this country in your op-ed, from economic disparities to racial injustices and more. But can you elaborate more on the issues that are impacting America right now?
Well, I wrote the article because, what the president was trying to do was to do more than politics as usual, which is, just worry about getting elected. I think he recognized that there are more things going on in this particular moment that we are in, and he is trying to provide moral leadership. So what the piece does is it picks up and basically says that the soul of America is in trouble, and the fight is not over because of the election. There are a lot of things going on in this country that are very, very troubling. Mm-hmm. We are polarized and divided. There's discord and violence on every hand. We are literally at each other's throats. And I just felt that, God wanted me to, in the sort of spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., mm-hmm. to begin a national conversation about how we can be a better country. Because Jesus wisely said, a house that's divided against itself, mm-hmm. it cannot stand. And so I think it's up to all of us to sort of stop, to sort of take a deep breath, and to get our fingers out of everyone else's face, mm-hmm. and begin to just say, wait a minute, what can I do to help America to be a better country? And so I'm excited that I've had the wonderful opportunity to write the op-ed in response to a call that the president has issued, but to then really pick that up as both a minister and a religious scholar, and to launch a broader, more comprehensive conversation about our national character, which is something I talk about in the piece.
Right, because it's an important topic, not just during President Biden, then candidate Biden's campaign, but to keep that conversation going.
Absolutely.
And Pastor Hay, what issues do you feel are most impacting the U.S. right now?
Well, something I like, Dr. Brogdon, that you said in the article is you kind of cut through a lot of the specifics and said hate is a major problem. Mm-hmm. And othering is something else that you talked about. And when I think of othering, I tend to go to like a sports analogy of, I know what it's like to be a fan of a team, two rival teams, and if you're on one team, you're pulling for one team, everything the other team does is bad. If anything good happens for the other team, mm-hmm. well, that's not fair. Yeah. They cheated. Or if the other team does something bad or wrong, it's not just wrong, but it's evil. It's like that's who that person is. And I see us doing that in America. I even see it sometimes kind of going over into the church where it's like you're on one team mm-hmm. or the other team. And it makes it easier to hate the other team mm-hmm. because you think they're evil and we're good. Mm-hmm. And I just see that happening in so many different areas of like this grouping of people together, and it just leads to hate.
Right, like an us versus them mentality. And yeah. Really it comes down to knowing your neighbors and knowing those who are different than yourself, yeah. interest-wise or otherwise. And Pastor Lowe, what about you? What would you add to what Pastor Hay and what Dr. Brogdon have said about the issues plaguing America? And also, it seems like there's so many issues. How do we overcome them as a society?
Right, and I believe what everybody's saying is we sense this. People from every political background, this cuts across parties, it cuts across so many of the divisions. We sense that there's something that just doesn't feel quite right. Like we're not living our best. My church is participating in a prayer service, and they're having the prayer service in the middle of the country, and they're saying, praying for the heart of America in the heart of America. And it falls right in line with what Dr. Brogdon is saying, that we sense that there's something more we could be doing. There's something better that we could be, a better life that we could be living. And a whole lot of that is how do we cut past the hate? He goes into how do we learn how to forgive? If we're going to address any of these major issues, we've got to learn to forgive, and we've got to learn to listen.
And I think that's key to forgiveness, but it seems like it would be one person at a time that you have to find it in your heart to forgive. But Dr. Brogdon, what do you think? Why is forgiveness so important for us to move past some of the troubles just haunting this country right now?
Well, I mean, forgiveness is talked about in Scripture. So part of the irony of this moment that we're in is that America calls itself a Christian nation. And so much of this hate and this violence is happening under the auspices of churches. I mean, churches are either participating in it, they're silent about it, which is only encouraging it to continue. I'm deeply troubled, I'm mortified that more Christian leaders aren't standing up and saying, wait a minute, this is not right. Because once we're able to acknowledge that the hate is there, then as a nation influenced by the Christian tradition, what are we supposed to do? Well, forgiveness is one of those wonderful practices that helps us to move beyond that. At the end of the op-ed, I also talk about the work of Dr. King, who in one sermon on a passage on Matthew chapter 5 talked about how do you forgive, how do you love your enemies? And one of the things he said is you can't, no matter if you think a person is your enemy, the thing you disagree with them about never expresses the whole of who they are. And that could really help this country right now. Is yes, we're going to have our differences, and I think ideological differences is healthy for a democracy. But the threat of hate we have to confront, and we're going to need tools like forgiveness, love, and not thinking the worst about each other because we disagree about certain things. And it's going to take religious leaders to exercise moral leadership in this country and start teaching people how to be neighbors with each other.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I do want to get into that more with the pastors and as we go on with this segment. So we do have to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this.